Sounded off on the president. This is outrageous. Watch this.
For those who might criticize this verdict, there are a number of people that have commented on this case in the last couple of years. The Attorney General of the United States, the President and Vice President of the United States. Let me just remind them that they are themselves under investigation by a special prosecutor in Washington, D.C., and they may themselves soon avail themselves of the presumption of innocence and the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. And so I would ask them to reflect on that before they comment or disparage the result in this case.
Joining us, radio talk show host with Radio America and author Dana Lash, also Fox News contributors Tomi Lahren, Jessica Turlov. Here's the fact. 6 times, this is going to be a 6th deportation. They wouldn't hand him over to the federal government who had requested that they hand this man over. Did this sanctuary city law kill Kate Steinle?
Well, the illegal immigrant himself is the one who killed Kate Steinle. But certainly the sanctuary city policy allowed him to stay here, and I think that there will be a sea change in this. We saw it in Virginia with the race. Ralph Northam came out against sanctuary cities. I believe it was key in him winning that race.
Could you say without sanctuary cities, in all likelihood, Kate Steinle would be alive tonight?
Without the San Francisco sanctuary city policy and the way that people there, she was 32, 33 years old. Yes, I imagine she would be alive.
Borders are so porous that a man can sneak back in a 6th time or 7th time?
There are, but we know that we have a net outflow of the country.
So do you now want to build the border wall?
No, I will never want to build a border wall because it's ineffective. If you want to put more border agents there,
say that to Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu swears it has changed Israel. I've seen it up close.
Israel and the United States are very different. Our borders are different. Go with the gang of 8. I do not believe that. There are a number of Republicans who don't believe that. If you talk to Republican congressmen in Texas, they say that is not the case. You want to put more agents there, I'm fine with that.
Let me go to Tomi Lahren. Tomi, your thoughts?
Well, to answer Jessica's question there, physical barriers work, and that's why Democrats don't like them. But Democrats are going to be put in a very interesting situation now. They're going to have to choose between illegal immigrants and the American people. And I'm anxiously awaiting, the response of the Democratic Party, because I think it's going to really help us in 2020.
Dana, like you, I've been using firearms since I'm young. He said he was aiming this at a sea animal, and then it became I stepped on it, and then it did ricochet and hit Kate Steinle in the back. This particular Sig Sauer, it's not one that I fired. I was wondering if you have.
I have, and I thought what Dan Bongino said earlier was pretty spot on. I thought that the defense was moronic on this, and I realized that, Sean, that there are certain things that the jury saw that we, the people, didn't see. But I do find it interesting that the same people who want to look at ballistics and forensic reports as it concerns ballistics, they ignored that in the Mike Brown case. Look, and for the lawyer to also invoke Donald Trump and then falsely also say that there's some sort of, that there's an investigation that was based on Kremlin propaganda which substantiated a FISA warrant, I thought was bizarre. This is moronic. People in California are not protected. The courts have said that there is no justice, no peace for the law-abiding. Those who break the law and enter illegally are given preference over law-abiding Americans, and California has now declared itself to be a dangerous state, Sean. California has decided that it wants to make it virtually impossible for law-abiding Americans to be able to choose their pro-choice right of self-defense, the feminist equalizer, a boomstick. But if you're an illegal alien and you are in that state being protected by it as a sanctuary state, well, then you're afforded all of the luxuries of American citizens, including rights that we have sacrificed for due process. And you're given a slap on the wrist that this wasn't even involuntary manslaughter is an affront to due process. It's an affront to justice and all the law-abiding citizens in California. This is shameful.
The system failed on so many different levels. If I'm President Trump tonight, I'm saying no federal dollars to any city, any state like California that says, and you just said to me, you agree. Sanctuary city law wasn't in existence. This girl would likely be alive tonight. So my question is, why should the federal government give 1 penny to any city that doesn't want to obey the laws of this country?
I think that all sanctuary cities should cooperate with ICE officials.
And if they don't, should we not give them federal dollars?
That's a whole other debate, and I'm sure the president will be tweeting about this.
Give me a reason why we should. If I'm President Trump, I'm saying not a dime to these cities.
Well, there's a lot that money gets used for, that it's not just for sanctuary city policy.
Too bad. If you're going to allow criminals, seven-time felons.
Mayors in sanctuary cities all over this nation are paying attention to what happened today, and I believe they will change
going to hold my breath.
And be more cooperative.
And that's not going to bring back Kate Steinle, is it?
No, it's not, and it's an absolute tragedy. We've been saying that from the beginning, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get the 11 million illegal immigrants who are here out of the country, that you're going to get rid of a policy that a number of Republicans have backed, including Rudy Giuliani, who said that we need to make sure that people can come out of the shadows to cooperate with law enforcement.
Let me go to Tommy.
Well, as someone that is actually residing in California right now, I can say as a young woman living in California, this sends a very clear message to me, and that is illegals are protected in this state and Americans are not. And these, I think that Jessica, her heart is probably in the right place, but anytime that you defend sanctuary cities, especially after this verdict has come out, I have to ask you, why would you still defend a policy that is harboring criminals? That's the end of the discussion. It's not, oh, there's a lot to look at here.
It's not the end of the discussion. When we have a national tragedy, and we have Dana on the panel who's a firearms expert, when we have a mass shooting, we don't say we need to take away all the guns because someone misused it.
Liberals do all the time.
They don't say we'll take away all the guns. We want responsible gun reform. 94% of Americans want.
I have to interject.
Well, please.
You know, law-abiding Americans are always blamed for the actions of criminal thugs like Zarate, this individual who murdered Kate Steinle. Law-abiding Americans who are Second Amendment practitioners are constantly blamed for the actions of repeat offenders like this illegal alien. But yet when the illegal alien does it, oh, it was an accident. He meant to shoot a SEAL. If only law-abiding Americans got as much courtesy and were afforded that as much as this individual was. It's never going to happen. But now you can understand why so many law-abiding Americans are so disgruntled at this.
I got to let you all go. Sad night. Yeah. Thoughts and prayers with this family. This system failed this family and this young girl.
Well, with reaction to this verdict, Mark Stein joins us tonight. This does, I mean, it just reminds you of a verdict 20 years ago in a case that was equally politicized, the O.J. Simpson murder trial, where the defense attorneys made it a referendum on larger injustice in American society. I want to read you a quote from one of the lawyers representing this man, in my view, is clearly a murderer, was just acquitted, as we're reporting. He said, and I'm quoting now, "This case is used to foment hate, division, and a program of mass deportation." So really, it sounds like this whole thing was recast as a political statement rather than a murder trial. So that, I mean, that's kind of the end of justice, isn't it? I mean, if trials can be subverted by national politics, then there's no hope for justice, right?
Well, I think it is a miscarriage of justice in the profoundest sense, in that Kate Steinle is dead because she went for a walk in a popular destination in her own city, and her parents will never see anybody convicted for that crime. There's no dispute. I mean, this is slightly different from the O.J. case, where at least he pretended to be looking for the real killers for the last 20 years. There's no dispute that this guy actually fired the shot or picked up the gun that then shot itself, and that this gunshot killed Kate Steinle. And there's no dispute either that this man should not have been in the country, that in fact he had been deported 6 times. And to go back to the old line, you know, about the jobs Americans won't do, every society has a proportion of murderers. Murder is a job that Americans will do, just as Dutchmen will do or Slovenes will do. You don't need to import foreigners to add to your murder population. No, this guy had a grade 2 education. We're told that the reason he got off is apparently because he's too stupid to understand what the cops were saying to him. So he gave conflicting answers about treading on the gun, finding the gun, firing at sea lions. He didn't understand. Why are we importing, and why is one political party, the entire bureaucracy, and 2/3 of the remaining political party fetishizing and sentimentalizing immigrants who can't speak the language with a grade 2 education, and setting up competing jurisdictions in this country that protect them at the expense of American citizens?
Right. Well, because they provide lower wages and handy voting blocks for those parties. So, but there's a massive cost, as you're pointing out, and as our viewers, of course, are well aware. This case gave rise to Kate's Law, as you know, much debated. But the reason it did was because the San Francisco authorities let this guy go, even after being asked by the feds to hold him for deportation. Right. They refused. So I guess it all adds up to a picture of not just, treating illegal immigrants as you would American citizens, but giving them, in effect, better treatment, special privileges because they're here illegally. I don't know. I can't. It's very hard to imagine that an American citizen in Zarate's position would have been acquitted on all these charges.
No, this is basically a lifelong career criminal, and the justification for letting him go is that there's no evidence of violent crime, just non-violent crime. But the very term sanctuary city is designed to shut down the argument, because who do you give sanctuary to? You give sanctuary to refugees, to those fleeing injustice. How can there be something called a sanctuary city if it was holding up a place for criminals to hold up? The very term is designed to shut down the debate. And the reason Donald Trump is president is because he declined to operate with those constraints. Most of the other Republican nominees 2 years ago, the Jeb Bushes and Lindsey Grahams and all the rest of it, were cowed by that kind of language, by sanctuary city and all the rest of it. And Donald Trump, in fairness, recognized. I mean, I weep for Kate Steinle's parents tonight. I do not know how I could go on living in that city if, God forbid, my daughter were to be shot by someone who should never have been in the country in the first place, and is actually being protected by the entire bureaucracy, political, media class of the country at the expense of American citizens.
That's exactly right. Really quickly, it's hard to imagine now, but 2 years ago when this happened, the behavior of the city of San Francisco, allowing this guy to go free in the face of requests from the feds to hold him, that was denounced by Hillary Clinton in the middle of the presidential race. Things have changed so much in 2 years in the Democratic Party. I wonder how many Democratic office holders will criticize his verdict tomorrow.
Yeah, and if you remember, Bernie Sanders championed American citizens and American workers. It's not going to be that way in the 2020 campaign. They've moved just in 2 years.
Pretty stunning. Mark Stein.